It's Thursday, it's the 19th of June. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG News, live from Seoul, our top stories today. Now, media reports emerged that Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit South Korea in the first week of July, and observers say his visit will establish a new dynamic for cooperation between the two nations, especially on North Korea. The U.S. Federal Reserve continues to retreat from its stimulus campaign, but sharply cuts its economic forecast for 2014. And World Cup at a glance. Defending champion Spain is knocked out of the World Cup by Chile, while the Netherlands secures a spot in the next round by defeating Australia. We'll have those stories and more, but first, this story. A senior U.S. official is hailing Chinese President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit to South Korea as greatly significant. Well, at a forum in Washington Wednesday, Daniel Russell, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, called Xi's trip an extraordinary milestone, adding that it should be helpful in promoting much-needed cooperation on North Korea. This is the first time a senior U.S. official has commented on the Chinese leader's planned visit. Now, meanwhile, Japan's Kyodo News, citing unnamed diplomatic sources in Seoul, is reporting that on this Thursday that Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit South Korea on July 3rd and 4th. Xi plans to make his first visit to Seoul as president early next month, but his exact schedule has not been officially announced. The push to restart the stalled talks on North Korea's nuclear program continues. South Korea's top nuclear envoy Hwang Jun-guk sat down with his Russian counterpart in Moscow Wednesday, and Russia's foreign ministry says that the two sides agreed that a political and diplomatic solution would be the best and only option in dealing with Pyongyang's nuclear program. Now, the ministry added that the members of the six-party nuclear talks needed to work together to resume the multilateral dialogue based on the principles that were agreed on back in 2005. Now, Hwang's trip to Russia this week comes after bilateral talks with his U.S. and Chinese counterparts earlier this month. Peace, prosperity, and stability, that's the only possible after denuclearization. That's a message from South Korean President Park Geun-hye to North Korea. Now, she was speaking in the Kazakh capital of Astana Wednesday, where the Korean leader said Pyongyang should learn from Kazakhstan's experience. Our correspondent Choi Yoo-sun is traveling with the president, and she filed us this report from Astana.
President Park says North Korea should take a lesson from Kazakhstan, having achieved economic development after giving up its nuclear arms. In an interview with a Kazakh TV station that aired on Wednesday, President Park spoke highly of the Central Asian nation's voluntary handover of some 1,000 former Soviet nuclear warheads in return for large-scale economic aid and security assurance from the West. Emphasizing that the two Koreas must prepare for reunification, President Park introduced her recent three-point proposal to first resolve the North's humanitarian issue, set up infrastructure in the North, and increase people-to-people exchanges. Meeting Koreans and the descendants of Korean immigrants from the former Soviet Union in Astana Wednesday, President Park expressed hopes to increase cooperation with Kazakhstan on renewable energy, transportation infrastructure, science, and technology. The president has been traveling Central Asia to promote her initiative of reconnecting energy and logistics infrastructure across Eurasia for regional peace and a new global economic system. Touting the Korean Kazakh community's achievements, President Park pledged customized support for them to well adjust to their environment while maintaining their ethnic identity, and for Koreans and the ethnic Koreans to develop under coexistence. With economic ties and North Korea high on her agenda, President Park, when she meets her Kazakh counterpart on Thursday, will seek to expand bilateral economic cooperation as well as Astana's support for her trust-building policies with North Korea. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Astana.
A UN monitor is again calling on the international community to step up efforts to deal with North Korea's continuous human rights abuses. The UN Special Rapporteur Marzuki Darusman said Wednesday that recent findings by the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights Abuses in North Korea show it's not just a political issue, but an international issue. Now, his inquiry team is calling for Pyongyang to be held accountable before the International Criminal Court to potentially prosecute leader Kim Jong-un and other powerful figures within the regime. A recent UN report showed that human rights abuses like rape, torture, and enslavement are prevalent in North Korea. Now, elsewhere across the globe, the Iraqi government is losing ground at a rapid pace to Sunni militant groups that are storming across that country. And desperate for help, the government has officially called on the U.S. for backup in the form of airstrikes. Washington is weighing its options. Here's our Kwon So-ah.
The U.S. is not quite sure yet how to deal with the worsening conflict in Iraq and has not yet replied to Iraq's formal request for U.S. air power to take on the militant group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. U.S. President Barack Obama, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey, and top congressional leaders discussed the issue at a hearing Wednesday.
The president's been watching what we've been watching for over a year as the situation in Iraq continued to be undermined. And yet nothing has happened to try to reverse it.
It is in our national security interest to counter ISIL wherever we find them.
General Dempsey, who has extensive experience commanding Iraqi troops, explained the difficulties of launching an attack from the air. He also expressed doubts that the U.S. has enough intelligence right now on potential targets, considering how quickly things have escalated in Iraq. Earlier this week, the U.S. deployed an aircraft carrier and missile ships in the Persian Gulf, leaving open the possibility of manned air or drone strikes on the Sunni militants. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Adios, espanoles, and viva Chile. As I mentioned on Wednesday, 2 wins, or on the flip side, 2 losses in the group stage means you're certain to keep going or start packing your bags. This was the case in Group B, as the 2 teams, the Netherlands and Chile, won their 2 games entering the knockout round. Spain, along with Australia, will be flying home after they play each other next week in a rather meaningless final group game. The Chile side was just too strong for the defending champions, making Spain look dull, ordinary in a comfortable 2-0 win in Rio. First half goals from Eduardo Vargas, who plays in Spain's La Liga for Valencia, and Charles Aranguiz put Chile in control, and they never looked in danger of losing their lead. Only 2 countries have ever won back-to-back World Cups, Italy all the way back in the 1930s, and Brazil for the 1958 and 62 World Cups. It was a fierce game in the other Group B match, with the Netherlands beating Australia 3-2 in a pulsating match. Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben both scored in their second straight game. In Group A, Croatia cruised past Cameroon 4-0, but remained in 3rd place in the group behind Brazil and Mexico. The African teams are eliminated. With that said, let's take a look at where the teams stand in their groups a week after the World Cup kicked off last Thursday. Now, this year's World Cup is a goal fest. We're seeing many more goals than we have seen in the World Cups gone by. An average of 3 goals have been scored per game so far, raising the bar for the world's top strikers to win the Golden Boot in Brazil. Now, the current leaders are tied at 3 goals each. Those are Germany's Thomas Müller, who scored a hat-trick in the first match against Portugal, and Netherlands' Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben. The Dutch squad have scored the most goals so far at 8, and Chile's next with 5. And this Brazuca, the official match ball, may just be that reason.
Our Kim Min-ji tells us more about the most advanced soccer ball yet.
In Team Korea's first match at the Brazil World Cup against Russia, forward Lee Geun-ho connected on a long-range goal. The ball seemed to be in the grasp of the Russian goalkeeper, but bounced off his hands and found its way into the net. The bazooka, the official match ball of the 2014 World Cup, has been pointed to as a possible reason behind the Russian player's miscue. It has deeper and longer seams which contribute to its aerodynamics. Its unique surface also makes it less air-resistant. Therefore, offensive players will find it easier to roll the ball with greater speed and accuracy, while making it harder for goalkeepers to snare.
Simply put, it is like a volleyball. It will be hard to catch if the goalkeeper doesn't have a sensitive reaction to the ball.
To prepare for the bazooka, Team Korea used a smaller ball during training.
I was able to enhance my concentration by using a smaller ball during training sessions. As I have to dive for the ball faster, it requires more agility.
The bazooka has made the Brazil World Cup a high-scoring affair. There's been an average of 3 goals per match so far, a figure not seen in more than 40 years at a World Cup tournament. Faster and stronger, the bazooka may indeed be a deciding factor in future matches. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And here's a look at today's games. First to kick off is the top 2 in Group C, Colombia and Côte d'Ivoire. Then comes the matches these teams will fight to win. The bottom 2 of Group C and D. That'll be 1, 4, and 7 a.m. on a Friday morning here in Korea. Let's hope the players give us another day to remember with goals, and some more goals. This has been Song Ji-sung with the updates on the World Cup.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East C and Japanese name C of Japan in school textbooks in the state of. The U.S. Federal Reserve has come out with a relatively upbeat assessment of the U.S. economy, well, in the long term at least. The Fed says the economy is showing signs of strength after a weak first quarter, but it'll still cut its growth outlook for this year. Connie Lee reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has given a positive outlook for the economy this year, even though the economic growth forecast was slashed. From a projection of 2.9% in March, growth has been cut to between 2.1 and 2.3%. This is the latest from the 2-day meeting of the Federal Reserve's policymakers. At a press conference on Wednesday, Fed Chair Janet Yellen, however, expressed the U.S. economy is rebounding and said interest rates, currently near zero, could begin to rise sometime next year. If this happens, it'll be the first rate hike since 2006. The exact timing, though, apparently depends.
There is no mechanical formula whatsoever for what a considerable time means. The answer as to what it means is it depends. It depends on how the economy progresses.
And as widely expected, the Fed cut its monthly bond purchases by another $10 billion to $35 billion, which shows confidence of a recovering economy. The Fed, in the meantime, will keep a watch on economic stability.
Today, Yellen came out and said that volatility may be too low, and we agree. Bond market volatility is very low, the stock market volatility is very low. So any sudden spike or in volatility could cause interest rates to rise pretty sharply.
Growth projections for 2015 and 2016 have been maintained, and Fed officials do forecast a drop in unemployment. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Back here in this country, lawmakers are taking a closer look at President Park Geun-hye's 3-year economic innovation plan on the second day of a plenary hearing on this Thursday. Now, ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers have been putting a premium on deregulation, saying it's necessary to stimulate the economy and prop up the slumping real estate market. Finance Minister Hyun Ho-suk said the government was looking into easing restrictions on home loans that were put into effect when household debt was rising at alarming levels. Lawmakers from the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, had a word of warning, though, saying success would be determined not by how much the economy grows, but by how much people's lives improve. The Korea-Colombia Free Trade Agreement continues to face difficulties as Colombia's Congress has refused to approve it. Latin America's news network Telesur reported that Colombia's House of Representatives on Tuesday decided to further study the clauses of the FTA and discuss the pact again at next month's session. Well, the sell comes amid concerns that the agreement will hurt Colombia's automobile industry, and the FTA was signed by Colombia and Korea in February 2013 to cut tariffs by 96% within the next 10 years. China, meanwhile, is rigorously developing its shale gas industry with the goal of producing up to 100 billion cubic meters of natural gas by 2020. Well, Beijing's drive is part of efforts to improve air quality and shift its power generation towards cleaner burning natural gas. And China has the world's biggest potential reserves of natural gas in shale rock, twice as much as the shale leader U.S. Now, pundits say that if the shale gas industry takes hold in China, it could very well hurt Korea's exports of petrochemical products, of which more than half heads to Asia's largest economy. Now, on a different note, the explosion in the number of consumers using smartphones means retailers and online shopping malls just cannot afford to miss out on the growing opportunities for mobile revenue. Here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
Korean consumers are increasingly turning to their smartphones to go shopping. They shop in their spare time, during working hours, and on public transportation. Like 27-year-old Kim Eun-hye, who says she has been shopping through her smartphone 5 days a week for the past 6 months.
I use mobile shopping day and night when I'm in the subway going to and from work. Because I spend most of my day working, I don't have the time to go shopping in the traditional way. I buy the necessities, and these days I'm shopping for summer clothes. It's easy and takes less than 5 minutes to buy something.
And Kim is hardly alone. GS Shop, one of Korea's largest online shopping malls, says the number of transactions made on its mobile application surpassed the number of those made through personal computers for the first time ever last month. 11th Street says more than 30% of its total sales comes from mobile shopping, up 10 percentage points from last year. The changing landscape has companies scrambling to come up with new ways to attract customers. 11th Street debuted a service in May that provides data for smartphone users when they window shop on the mobile platform. GS Shop has introduced a customer service menu that makes it easier for users to get questions answered. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Well, it looks like Samsung and Apple have a new competitor in the cutthroat global smartphone market, none other than online retail giant Amazon. Long waved off as nothing more than a rumor, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos on Wednesday unveiled the Fire phone at an event in Seattle. Amazon's device has some interesting features that Samsung and Apple phones lack. For instance, the phone's Firefly feature lets a user scan barcodes and buy products with a touch of a button, so long as they're available on Amazon's website. The Fire phone is also capable of displaying images in 3D thanks to 4 specialized cameras that track a person's head movements. The Fire phone will be released on July 25th. And now it's time for a look at the arts and culture scene here in Korea. And for that, let's bring in our Im Yoon-hee to talk about a new traditional Korean performance for us today. So, good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So, I hear this performance is based on the pansori folktale called Pyeongangsue, which has a reputation for being an adult folktale.
Exactly. So this particular pansori just couldn't shake its image of being explicit, and as a result, it was rather neglected and is one of the least performed of the pansoris. Now, this director wanted to change that, and so he created a changguk, which is a Korean traditional opera based on this pansori, where he's able to recreate the character Ongnyo, also known as Madame Ong. Take a look.
Something's wrong with the town Casanova, Pyeongangsue. He seems to have succumbed to something. But what? Maybe he's become just another victim of his wife, Ongnyo, a woman who was exiled from a previous village after each one of her past husbands mysteriously died. When the two first met, they thought it was a match made in heaven. Pyeongangsue was supposed to be the one man who can keep up with Ongnyo's sexual prowess. But after angering some magical totems, he drops dead as well, and Ongnyo vows to change their fate. The story of these traditional fable characters comes together on the stage for the National Changguk Company of Korea's latest endeavor, a work that reinvents one of the most misunderstood of pansoris.
With this performance, the words are written very cleverly to create a sexy comedy, and the choreography isn't overdone, but at the same time, everyone knows what's going on. This time, Ongnyo is much more aggressive than in past versions. Even the songs empower her.
It's a traditional Korean opera, rich in history, but this changguk takes on a modern approach. These totems, something usually meant to be stationary wooden objects, are brought to life on this stage. And as sound is the most important aspect of a changguk, the members of this performance aren't quiet. They're not even shy when it comes to showing the sexy side of Ongnyo. She undresses herself in the shadows, leaving the totems at a loss for words and eager to get a peek. The performance brings years of Korea's history and culture to the stage and sheds light on the lives of the ordinary people of the time period, people who worked, loved, and lived together.
This isn't just about showing something sexual. These days, everything on the internet and TV is so lewd. So I wanted to show the life and love of ordinary people. Don't ever stop loving.
Ongnyo is determined to bring back her husband in this new twist to an old tale. Whether or not she will succeed in changing her fate is yet to be seen, but it will surely be heard in the voices and songs of this performance.
I've never seen a changguk of this sort, but I feel like there should be an age restriction.
Right. Actually, it's the first changguk in the history of the National Changguk Company of Korea to have an age limit. So you have to be 18 or older to actually see it.
Wow, that's not something that I've ever heard of. But here in Korea, Pyeongangsue is not a new character. I mean, he's infamous for his Casanova ways. He's a player. Exactly. But I've heard that the original pansori this performance is based on is actually all about this Pyeongangsue character.
Actually, so they took this Pyeongangsue character and they made it more about Ongnyo, the woman character. The director said that he feels that she's a misunderstood character who has a strong will and has perseverance, and he wanted to bring that out and recreate a reputation for her, which is exactly what he did with this performance.
So a shift in focus from the male character to the female character. It seems like the National Changguk Company of Korea is attempting to revive pansori.
Right, so this is actually the third performance in a 7-part series of the National Changguk Company of Korea, and so they really want to recreate these original works into changguks and to bring out the beauty and the uniqueness of Korean performances like a changguk.
Right, definitely something that we should check out, as Koreans, to see how their rendition of a Pyeongangsue character and Ongnyo, of course, is, but just not with children, right?
Leave the kids at home.
All right, thank you so much for that, Yoonhee, and we will see you next week.
See you then.
Let's start with the forecast for Brazil and the World Cup games. It'll be hot in most cities hosting the games, with highs reaching up into the high 20s to low 30s, except in Brasilia, where it's cool with a just high of 15 degrees. And also rain is in the forecast for Natal and Sao Paulo. Now, as for the weather conditions in Korea, we can expect a hot day with temperatures reaching into the low 30s in some regions, and it's rather cloudy here in the capital, but they will clear out as we move through the day. Now, meanwhile, we can expect another rain tonight with some thunderstorm over in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, and also the humidity seems to be increasing as well. Now, going over to our temperature readings, so we'll top out at 27 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 31 and 26 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 25, Dokdo at 21, while Mount Gyeongang tops out at 23. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanya.
Thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's just about all from me at this hour. I'm Moon Gun-young. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.